Before I let you out of 25, we talked about this with Sister Olson, but let's talk about it again because it is a well-known verse. How do you see 2 Nephi 25:23? We write to persuade our children, our brethren, to believe in Christ, to be reconciled to God. And then this statement, for we know that it is by grace that we are saved after all we can do. Very few verses have received the kind of coverage that verse has out of the Book of Mormon. When you come across this with students or other people that you're teaching, how do you take that on?
Well, yeah, I've written a fair bit about this, and I give a whole day in my class to it. It can be read, I think, in ways that are misleading. I think the very first thing to notice about it is that it states very bluntly that it is by grace that we are saved. And it's kind of amazing to me that people have taken a passage that explicitly states that it is by grace that we are saved and sometimes turned it into something that says the opposite. Yeah. That's very strange. The second thing to say about it, I think, is when Nephi says, after all we can do, and people will say, well, that's very plain then. I'm saved by grace, sure, fine, but only after I've done everything I can. But notice that that changes the wording if we think it that way. It doesn't say after we do all we can, but after all we can do. Right? Those are very different ideas. This verse doesn't actually refer to anything I have done. It refers to what I could do. And that is a very different idea. To say that we're saved by grace after all we can do is to say, like, even if I did everything right, still grace. Still grace. And that feels to me like King Benjamin saying, if you were to give all the thanks and praise with your whole soul, everything you've got power to possess, and if you were to serve God with everything you've got, you'd still be unprofitable servants. It's the same message.
I always think of King Benjamin, like you just said, saying, are we not all beggars? We're in that position. None of us can kind of list our things that we've done and say, therefore, I should, nope, we're in the position of a beggar. We can't earn it. It will be by grace. After all we can do, I always think of Jesus saying, I'm the vine, you're the branches, and without me, you can do nothing.
Nothing.
The grace of Christ, to paraphrase Elder Hafen, is available before, during, and after anything we can do. It's not a sequence, that afterword. I think we look at it like this and then this, and we get some sort of false sequence in our minds when we're relying on grace before, during, and after everything.
It's interesting to me, Joe, that there's so many other verses in the Book of Mormon that say we rely wholly on the merits of Christ. Since man had fallen, he could do nothing of himself, save it through the merits of Christ. Yet this one has stood out to mean the exact opposite, that I rely on myself. I'm hoping our listeners will walk away encouraged by this verse. How might I rephrase it, or how should I think about it? And maybe you've already told us this. Tell us it again. How can I walk away from this going, oh, that really uplifts me and empowers me?
What's at stake there is simply that it isn't I who has to do it. It's not on me. This is God's work. The discouraging thing is I'm going to fail. The encouraging thing is it's not about me. So it doesn't matter that I'm going to fail. I find in the next handful of verses where Nephi is wrestling with the relationship between the law and the Messiah, I find a really nice way of thinking about this. So verse 25, he says this, for this end, for this purpose, this aim, was the law given, which is to say, to get us to look forward unto Christ. That's what he has just said in verse 24. But for this end was the law given, wherefore the law hath become dead unto us, and we are made alive in Christ because of our faith. I think that's beautiful. If the law is supposed to point us to the coming of Christ, then the law, if it's treated apart from the coming of Christ, is dead. But if I can see that the law, in fact, is always pointing me to Christ, then it's not about whether I fulfill the law. Christ's job is to fulfill the law. My job is to look forward to him in faith. And that, of course, comes with things he's asking me to do. But I'm not supposed to be the one that fulfills it. Whether we're talking about the law of Moses or any law God has ever given, Christ is the fulfiller of the law. My job is to keep the law. That's the way he words it. Protect it, guard it, ensure its sacredness, make sure that it is recognized as binding. I'm supposed to let that law guide and direct, but not if that law hasn't been fulfilled by me, then it's a disaster. No. This is actually deeply encouraging. I will fail. Fine. Not the issue. Just not the issue at all. Christ will not fail.